You're not unmotivated. You're overstimulated. Your mind isn't lazy. It's drowning. Every sound, every scroll, every notification has become another cut against your focus. You've been trained to crave noise, to chase instant dopamine, to fear stillness. And now you mistake exhaustion for failure. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." That's what overstimulation is, the modern soul's escape plan. You don't run from your goals. You run from the silence that would expose your lack of direction. Your brain wasn't built for this constant assault. You've turned every free second into a microdose of distraction. TikTok between tasks, music during meals, reels before bed. You've fed your brain so much stimulation that real life, slow, quiet, and demanding, no longer feels rewarding. So you call yourself unmotivated. You think you've lost discipline, drive, or passion. But that's not the truth. You haven't lost motivation, you've lost capacity. The ability to do deep, meaningful work has been buried beneath shallow pleasure. And until you starve the noise, you'll never hear the signal. You don't need more motivation. You need detox. 1. Your brain isn't lazy. It's overloaded. You're not broken. You're overloaded. What most people call laziness today isn't a lack of willpower. It's the paralysis that comes from overstimulation. Your brain isn't tired of work. It's tired of worthless input. Every second of your life, your mind is absorbing more information than any generation before you. Thousands of images, sounds, opinions, and microbursts of dopamine flood your nervous system from the moment you wake up. You don't get to warm up. You start your day sprinting, mentally, emotionally, digitally. And by the time you're supposed to focus on your goals, your brain is already exhausted. Carl Jung believed that the modern mind suffers not from lack of meaning, but from overload, too much data, too little depth. And that's exactly what's happening now. We've traded stillness for stimulation. The brain, built for exploration and creation, has become a dumping ground for endless distraction. Every scroll, every ping, every notification spikes dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. But dopamine isn't happiness. It's anticipation. It's the feeling that something rewarding is coming. When you flood your brain with it constantly through entertainment, validation, or mindless scrolling, you condition it to expect constant novelty. And that's where the problem begins. Because when everything is stimulating, nothing is meaningful. Your brain's reward system starts to desensitize. The little hit you used to get from real progress, a finished workout, a completed project, a moment of discipline, no longer gives the same satisfaction. Compared to the speed of digital dopamine, real life feels slow, heavy, and boring. That's why you procrastinate, not because you're weak, but because your brain is wired for instant payoff. Work doesn't provide that anymore. It's not stimulating enough. So you reach for the next hit, another video, another scroll, another distraction. And then you wonder why motivation feels impossible. The truth is, motivation hasn't left you. It's just buried under the noise. The more you consume, the less capacity you have to create. You've overloaded your system to the point where stillness feels painful. Silence feels like withdrawal. That's not laziness, that's addiction. Your mind is begging for peace, but you keep feeding it chaos. It's not that you can't focus, it's that you've forgotten what focus feels like. Your brain has been trained to chase stimulus, not purpose. It's reacting, not choosing. This is why every dopamine detox, every minimalist philosophy, every return to disciplined movement exists. Not because productivity is the goal, but because sanity is. Your brain was never designed to handle constant input without rest. The human nervous system needs space, boredom, and silence to regenerate. Without it, your thoughts become fragmented, your goals blurry, and your self-image unstable. Jung would have called this the sickness of modern consciousness. Overstimulated, underdeveloped. We've mistaken activity for meaning, consumption for experience, and stimulation for life. The result is a collective burnout of the soul, an exhaustion that no vacation or motivational quote can fix. But awareness is the first step to recovery. Once you see that your laziness is just overstimulation, you can stop punishing yourself and start detoxing your attention. Reduce input, reclaim silence. Give your brain space to breathe again. Because your mind isn't the enemy, it's the battlefield. And right now, it's not discipline you lack, it's clarity. You don't need to push harder, you need to unplug long enough to remember what stillness feels like. Then you'll realize you were never unmotivated, you were just buried alive under noise. 2. You're rewarding yourself for doing nothing. Carl Jung once warned that what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. In today's world, what we've stopped resisting is comfort, and it's growing into our greatest disease. We've built a society that gives us rewards without effort, the feeling of success without the struggle, dopamine without discipline. You no longer have to build something meaningful to feel accomplished. You just have to open an app. Every like, every view, every comment triggers the same neurochemical response that used to come from real achievement. The brain can't tell the difference between the validation of a screen and the fulfillment of hard work. It only knows dopamine. But the soul knows the difference. The brain has been hacked. It's been rewired to associate pleasure with nothing. You scroll, you tap, you swipe, and your reward center lights up like you've climbed a mountain, when all you've done is move your thumb. You've earned the feeling of progress without progress itself. And that's the trap. When pleasure becomes effortless, purpose becomes unnecessary. The more you reward yourself for doing nothing, the less drive you have to do something. The brain stops chasing challenge because challenge feels obsolete. Why struggle for reward when reward is always a few clicks away? This is how potential dies quietly, not through failure, but through cheap satisfaction. We are a generation drowning in simulated success. Digital validation has replaced real contribution. People would rather appear accomplished than actually become something. Jung would have called this the death of individuation, the loss of inner development in favor of external illusion. You can see it everywhere. We post before we practice. We share before we learn. We celebrate before we build. Our instincts, once wired to pursue growth and survival, now chase novelty and applause. And the irony is that we mistake this for motivation. But the brain cannot sustain purpose when its reward system has been hijacked. Each unearned dopamine spike numbs your capacity to feel real accomplishment. The harder path starts to look pointless. The easier one becomes the default. That's why modern life feels hollow, even when it's comfortable. Comfort gives pleasure, but it never gives meaning. Meaning is earned. It's carved through friction, through failure, through sacrifice. And when you remove those, you remove the very structure that makes life worth living. Jung said the soul demands struggle. It grows through tension. But in the age of instant gratification, tension has been eliminated. Everything is effortless. Everything is available. You don't have to fight for anything. And because of that, nothing satisfies. You've trained your brain to expect dopamine without depth, which is why depth now feels like deprivation. Reading feels boring. Work feels heavy. Discipline feels impossible. The things that build you no longer reward you, because your reward system has been rewired to crave shortcuts. But here's the brutal truth. What comes easily will never change you. The brain that gets used to free pleasure forgets how to earn real joy. The mind that's fed constant stimulation forgets the hunger that drives creation. You're not addicted to your phone. You're addicted to unearned dopamine. The only cure is recalibration, the slow starvation of empty pleasure until meaning tastes good again. You have to earn your dopamine back. Make it expensive. Make it cost something. Because when pleasure is cheap, purpose dies. But when pleasure is earned through struggle, through work, through mastery, it transforms into something sacred, fulfillment. You were never meant to live off crumbs of digital approval. You were meant to feast on the satisfaction of creation. And that's the difference between the distracted and the disciplined. One chases dopamine, the other earns it. 3. You mistake stimulation for progress. Carl Jung warned that the modern person would become so flooded with information that they would mistake awareness for transformation. That prophecy has come true. We no longer seek wisdom, we binge it. We consume knowledge like entertainment, mistaking the rush of stimulation for the reality of growth. You scroll through motivation, self-improvement, and success videos. You read quotes about discipline, watch morning routines, and feel that spark of inspiration. For a few minutes you believe. You feel ready to change your life, as if absorbing wisdom is the same as living it. But it isn't. Inspiration without action is anesthesia. It gives you the illusion of progress while quietly numbing your will to act. Your brain, overloaded with motivational input, learns to substitute consumption for creation. You feel productive after a 60-second clip. You feel accomplished after hearing someone else's story. You feel enlightened after scrolling through philosophy. But nothing in your life actually moves. You are not becoming wiser. You are becoming more stimulated. And here's the trap. Stimulation feels like momentum. Your dopamine spikes when you imagine a better version of yourself, the disciplined one, the successful one, the fearless one. But the brain can't distinguish imagination from implementation. It rewards the fantasy as if you've already done the work. So you never start. You stay stuck in a loop of consuming potential, mistaking mental activity for actual movement. This is why people can be addicted to self-help yet stay unchanged. They feed on motivation, never realizing that the brain is addicted to the feeling of growth, not growth itself. Jung called this spiritual inflation, the false sense of evolution that comes from ideas untested by experience. You build castles of thought, but never pour a single brick in reality. You are not lazy. You are overstimulated by the idea of change. The more inspiration you consume, the less urgency you feel to act. because action demands friction. It's messy, slow, uncertain. And when your dopamine system is used to instant hits, real effort feels painfully dull. You chase the next video, the next quote, the next burst of stimulation, hoping it will finally unlock you. But the lock is internal, and no amount of external noise can open it. Progress doesn't come from stimulation. It comes from repetition, from sitting in silence, from doing the work no one can film, from choosing depth over dopamine, process over performance. Jung believed that real transformation begins the moment you stop collecting insight and start living it. Truth is useless until it's embodied, but embodiment requires deprivation, the willingness to step away from the stream of stimulation long enough to hear your own thoughts again, to feel boredom, to wrestle with stillness, to create something instead of consuming everything. That's where the psyche begins to reorganize, in silence, not in noise. The truth is harsh. You don't need more motivation. You don't need another video, another mentor, another system. You need stillness long enough to act. Because wisdom that isn't lived becomes poison. It numbs your potential under the illusion of progress. Every minute you spend watching someone else build their dream, you're abandoning your own. So stop feeding on inspiration. Start creating friction. Let boredom return. Let action replace stimulation, because the mind that's constantly entertained never evolves. And the man who consumes wisdom but never applies it isn't becoming enlightened. He's becoming dependent on the idea of change. 4. You've been trained to fear boredom. Silence, the one thing modern life has successfully erased. We fill every gap, every pause, every breath with noise. Music while walking, podcasts while driving, screens before sleep. We've turned stillness into something to be avoided at all costs. Because when the noise stops, something far more unsettling begins: our thoughts. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And that's exactly what overstimulation is, a strategy to escape the confrontation of silence. Because silence reveals what distraction hides, that most people have lost their focus, their clarity, their connection to purpose. Boredom is not the enemy. It's a mirror. It shows you how dependent you've become on stimulation to feel alive. It reflects the inner emptiness that endless entertainment temporarily disguises. When you can't sit still, when quiet feels unbearable, it's not because you're restless, it's because your mind is trying to detox from chaos. The overstimulated mind doesn't crave meaning. It craves movement. It equates noise with progress, motion with value. But that's an illusion. The soul doesn't speak in volume, it speaks in stillness. And when you can't stop filling the silence, you'll never hear the instructions your deeper self is trying to give you. Jung believed that the unconscious, the vast hidden part of you, communicates through symbols, dreams, and intuition. But those signals are subtle. They require space to surface. In a noisy mind, they're drowned out. It's not that your inner wisdom is gone, it's that it can't be heard above the static. That's why people say they've lost direction. It's not that the soul has stopped guiding them, it's that they've stopped listening. True direction arises from silence. It's born in the space between distractions. It appears when you're still enough to notice what truly calls to you. But in a culture addicted to stimulation, boredom feels like death. And so we run, we scroll, we fill, we escape. We call it staying connected. But really it's disconnection disguised as productivity. Here's the paradox. The more you run from boredom, the more meaningless your life becomes. Because boredom is not emptiness, it's potential. It's the clearing before creation, the silence before the song, the space where imagination and intuition awaken. Every artist, thinker, and creator throughout history has understood this. Boredom is the birthplace of vision. But we've been conditioned to treat it as a problem. Schools punish stillness. Corporations glorify busyness. Social media rewards speed. We're trained to believe that our worth is tied to constant output, and that stillness is laziness. But in truth, stillness is strength. It's the mind's reset button, the point where chaos settles and clarity returns. Jung would call silence a sacred dialogue with the self, the deeper, eternal part of you that knows where you're meant to go. But to hear it, you must be brave enough to disconnect, to step away from noise, not as rejection of the world, but as reconnection to your center. The next time you feel bored, don't reach for stimulation. Sit with it, observe it, let it speak. Beneath the discomfort lies direction. Beneath the restlessness lies revelation. Because the truth is this, boredom is not the absence of meaning, it's the doorway to it. And if you can't walk through that door, if you can't face silence without distraction, you'll live your entire life following noise instead of purpose. Boredom isn't your enemy, it's your compass, but only if you're still enough to listen. 5. Detox is the new discipline. Carl Jung believed that true transformation begins with subtraction, with stripping away everything false until only the essential remains. In a world addicted to stimulation, the most radical act of strength is not doing more, but doing less. Not adding effort, but removing noise. You've been told discipline means pushing harder, working longer, grinding endlessly. But the modern battle isn't fought with effort, it's fought with attention. Your greatest resource isn't time or talent, it's focus. And every day, that focus is being drained by the endless noise of the digital world. The modern mind is overstimulated but undernourished. You wake up to notifications, scroll through chaos, drown in comparison, and wonder why your clarity is gone. It's not that you failed, it's that you're never silent long enough to remember who you are. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." But how can you look inward when your mind is constantly hijacked outward? Detox is the new discipline because silence is the new superpower. The warrior of this age doesn't win through aggression. He wins through attention control. He fasts from noise. He learns to sit in emptiness without needing to fill it. He starves his mind of cheap dopamine until it hungers again for purpose, depth, and creation. This is what mental fasting is. Not a punishment, but purification. Every time you disconnect, your mind begins to heal. Every moment you resist the impulse to scroll, your brain rewires itself to find satisfaction in stillness again. The chaos of overstimulation fades, and beneath it, something ancient begins to emerge: focus, intuition, truth. But the process isn't easy. Detoxing from stimulation feels like withdrawal, because it is. You've conditioned your brain to expect constant hits of novelty, sound, color, movement, reward. When that stops, silence feels unbearable. You'll feel restless, empty, anxious. You'll crave the noise. But if you can push through that discomfort, you'll discover something few people ever experience anymore: mental freedom. The disciplined mind is not the one that can do the most. It's the one that can endure stillness without panic. Jung would call this the integration of consciousness, the moment when you stop being dragged by impulses and start directing them. You become the master of your attention instead of its slave. Think of it like physical training. You don't get stronger by constantly feeding your muscles. You grow through periods of rest and recovery. The same is true of the mind. Overuse destroys clarity. Rest restores it. Detox isn't about isolation, it's about recalibration. It's stepping away from noise long enough to remember what's real. Every genius, mystic, and warrior throughout history understood this. The monk retreats to the monastery. The fighter enters silence before battle. The artist isolates before creation. Solitude isn't escape, it's preparation. It's where the mind becomes sharp, still, and lethal again. You don't need another motivational video. You don't need another productivity system. You need silence. You need to step into that terrifying void where there are no distractions left. Just you, your thoughts, and the truth you've been avoiding. That's where clarity is born. Discipline in this age isn't measured by how much you can endure, but by how much you can ignore, by how deliberately you protect your attention, because the one who can withdraw from the noise rules the world shaped by it. So turn off the screen, sit with the silence, fast from the chaos. Your power doesn't grow when you consume more, it grows when you need less. Detox is no longer optional. It's survival. And in the age of overstimulation, silence is not weakness, it's war. Carl Jung said that modern man has lost contact with his soul, and now you know why. It's not because we've grown weaker, but because we've become louder. Drowned in stimulation, we've mistaken motion for meaning, noise for life, and distraction for progress. The cure isn't more effort. It's emptiness. It's not about finding motivation, but rediscovering stillness. You were never unmotivated, you were overstimulated. Your energy was scattered across 1,000 meaningless impulses. Your focus traded for cheap dopamine, your peace stolen by constant input. You don't need another push. You need a pause. The next evolution of strength isn't built in chaos, it's forged in quiet. True discipline is not in how much you can do, but in how little you need to. It's the ability to be still while the world screams for your attention. When you disconnect, you don't lose connection. You reclaim it. With yourself, with purpose, with what actually matters. So stop calling it laziness. Stop calling it burnout. Start calling it what it is, overstimulation. And the antidote isn't more fuel. It's less fire. Because when the noise fades, the mind resets. And in that silence, your true direction returns, steady, focused, unstoppable.